They print tons of money, and it all goes to disproportionately to the top 1/10 of 1%. Then they're all shocked. Then they say we're going to raise taxes. We are now in a period, you've got to call it neo-feudalism, where 99.9% of the global wealth is controlled by a few thousand people.
Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Talk Crypto. In today's video, we have Max Keiser and Stacy Herbert of the Orange Pill podcast, commenting on the current state of the markets, the corruption of the fiat system and the latest news from Davos-Switzerland, where the World Economic Forum's annual meeting just took place, amid an energy crisis, soaring inflation and rising interest rates. Some of the topics discussed at this meeting were the banking system, global recession, re-globalization, artificial intelligence, crypto, and of course Central Bank Digital Currencies, which Max has already said are coming in 2023. So let's listen to Max and Stacy as they comment on the Davos meeting, and go over what they're seeing in the global economy, that's being corrupted and controlled by a handful of people. But before we do, please consider subscribing to our channel, as we bring you daily content on the latest crypto news. And now, let's jump right into the video.
There's three stories. There's markets are going higher, we don't know why.
Yeah.
Markets are going lower, we don't know why. Markets are unchanged, and it's the Goldilocks market.
Yeah.
Not too hot, not too cold. Those are basically the only three stories you see on financial news.
Yeah.
And the Goldilocks market, of course, means that the markets aren't particularly volatile today. So it's the Goldilocks market. And then tomorrow, if there's a sudden crash, it'll be, oh my God, there's a crash. Why is there a crash? Etc. But those are the three basic stories.
Yeah, and I know that there's some sort of confab going on in Davos with all those horrible cantillionaires. You know, the Davos set sorts were also like really into the COVID lockdowns and extreme lockdown, and everybody work from home, everybody get the COVID shot, everybody wear masks, and we're going to pay for it all with this magical money, right? We're going to just print up trillions. So by their own prescription for the global economy, the richest 1% of people amassed almost 2/3 of new wealth created in the last 10 years, Oxfam says. Well, this happened back in 2008, 2009, and that's when they started quantitative easing. And lo and behold, like 5 years later, they're like, oh, guess what? All that money we printed went entirely to the top 1%. And oh my God, they got so wealthy. Oh my God, we had no idea. Well, we're just going to have to tax them, right? And then they introduce a new tax, and the 1% never pay it. Nope, no. It's just the ordinary Joe bag of donuts, and they get 87,000 new IRS agents to chase them down. So this is a situation again. So they're shocked, apparently, so shocked.
Right, the script is never varying. They print tons of money, and it all goes to disproportionately to the top 1/10 of 1%. Then they're all shocked. Then they say we're going to raise taxes. And of course, the taxes are only applied to reported income. And so most of the money that gets printed goes into that offshore pool of capital managed by the big four accounting firms that never sees the light of a tax agent and never gets taxed. It's never reported, right? So yes, it's true that the top 1 or 2% pay most of the tax, but only on their reported income, right? And they only report maybe 10 or 15% of their actual income. And the rest goes into that black market, that black pool.
Keiser says banks have been printing money for many years, allegedly to inject into the economy, but the reality is only a small portion actually gets to the bottom 90% that pay most of the taxes. This unfair allocation of money is referred to as the quintillion effect, where only the top 1% have access to this new money that's being created by the bank's printer, and the disproportion of this allocation is absolutely insane.
As they point out in this, so there was 42 trillion new printed money in the 2 years.
Right.
And almost all of it, like over half went, 2/3 went to the top 1%. And they said, so every billionaire, a billionaire would receive $1.7 million for every $1 somebody in the bottom 90% received. So they received 1.7 million. So that's the problem with that fiat system and that fiat corruption in an age of, like I always say, where Bastiat said, when plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that justifies it and a moral code that glorifies it. So we have this legal system and moral code whereby they are justify that, okay, we're so benevolent. All these people meeting in Davos really care about the bottom 90%. We care so much about you. We're going to give you $1 each. But for all my hard work for giving you that money, I'm going to collect a 1.7 million for every dollar.
Exactly. This kind of black pool of assets that I'm talking about, that within that pool, there is asset sales and income generated. And the asset sales are not taxed, and the income generated, let's say on a bond, for example, is also not taxed. So that's what I'm saying. When you have a tax evasion complete in that pool, and that's estimated, last I saw, roughly $25 trillion is just captured and managed by those 4 big accounting firms. Nothing's ever taxed in there. Once something goes in there, it's gone forever. No government ever sees it. There's Bono at the Davos talking about how equitable everybody should be treated in the world. His band, they haven't paid tax in 50 years.
Well, no, and worse than that, he's not saying it's equitable. He's saying that governments should give more money to his cause, his group, which will go distribute some money to Africa or to other parts of the world, and therefore you who have to pay the taxes, you pay for it.
Stacy refers to Frederick Bastiat, a 19th century philosopher and economist, famous for his ideas about the role of the state in economic development, to explain the corruption of the fiat system and how they create a moral system to justify their actions. But Max says we're now entering a new era that is a complete nightmare.
Davos, once again, every year it's the same, kind of script, the same thing. It just gets more outlandish. The disproportionate between, as we've said for a while, it's gone from quintillionaires, and it's gone from super rich, and it's gone from the Gini coefficient. That's measuring the wealth gap in different countries. And we see, for example, France usually has a lower Gini coefficient than maybe the United States, for example. But we're so far off the charts in terms of even Gini coefficient. We are now in a period, you've got to call it neo-feudalism, where 99.9% of the global wealth is controlled by a few thousand people. And that's no longer akin to any economic system other than feudalism.
The notion of this CBDC, and of course they're talking about it again in Davos. Okay, I'm not a journalist. I saw a headline go through where there are like 300 agencies in the U.S. like looking at all the any of your transactions. Like there's a collection of your transactions that all these agencies are looking at in the US, or your financial transactions. But that they're gathering all this data, they're building this infrastructure while you're in that matrix, that you're just sitting there in this free money matrix where you think you're in a free money matrix. Again, remember, they're giving you $1, and for every dollar they give you, and you're so happy and you're like, yeah, just feed me more, baby. Like every time they give you one more dollar, they take a 1.7 million. And of course, over the course of just these 2 years since they started it, or maybe it's almost 3 years now, there's a huge gap that has emerged that you will never be able to jump across that.
No, they give the average Joe $1, and they take, and I'm so old, I remember when it used to be they take $100,000.
Yeah.
And then every few years that number gets bumped up. Now we're at 1.7 million.
Yeah.
And the feudalistic nightmare that's unfolding is one where you literally have a society that's developed. I mean, people just have to look at the images on the street. It's depressing to kind of describe exactly what's going on, but people are aware of what's going on.
Max and Stacy have been reporting on the quintillion effect and the money printing for almost 20 years, and that's just about the time where a special event took place, that Max believes was the beginning of the end. Let's see what Max has to say about it.
I mean, remember where it all started. You said it was 9/11 in 2001 when the wealthy, there was some sort of indication that the whole game was over.
I'm a New Yorker. I know New York very well, and New York is a town that has an enormous pride in itself as the best city in the world, the greatest city in the world. And there's a lot of money in New York. There's a lot of billionaires in New York. The media of the world is focused in New York. 9/11 had a profoundly negative impact on the United States, in that you saw in the media capital of the world a staged terrorist attack where not only one building was taken down, but then when all the media was focused on that one building going down, the second building went down. I think at that moment, the people in New York who are uber wealthy and around the world as well took that as an indication that, you know what, we need to start pulling our cash out of the system completely. No more philanthropy projects, no more good guy, no more Mr. Nice Guy. We need to start pulling our money out. And we saw liquidity dry up. And we saw the response from the Federal Reserve Bank was to lower rates and inject lots of cash. And a lot of that had to do with those with a lot of resources were pulling it out and putting in that offshore kind of black pool of capital. And I think we're still kind of in that period where the people who have, you know, the oligarchs and the robber barons from the 1920s, you know, a lot of them went on to build libraries or they built social programs. You know, they felt an obligation to give back in a huge institutional way, build universities, build schools. We don't really see that anymore. You know, I'm open to be debated on this point because I think that those with those resources are really just hightailing it out of town. They're like, we want to get out of here.
So when China was elevated to the WTO just after 9/11, that was another one of the building dropping. You know, that was another building falling of the financial center. That's the manufacturing heartland that fell while everybody was focused on New York City. The manufacturing of the U.S. was at that very moment taken and sent overseas.
Yeah, and initially it wasn't necessarily perceived completely in a negative light because although wages started to go down and the high-paying manufacturing jobs disappeared, the prices of stuff that was manufactured in China and then shipped over and appeared in Walmart, like flat-screen TVs, clothes, and other items, went down precipitously. So even though your income went down, the price of stuff went down more. So your quality of life wasn't necessarily perceived to be degraded. However, what we've seen now in the last couple of years is the flip side of that. Now you've got inflation, not deflation, and your income is not keeping up. And now you've got a loss of standard of living.
What do you guys think of Max and Stacy's view on this matter? Are people really becoming more aware of what's going on behind the scenes? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give us a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. This is Let's Talk Crypto and we'll see you in the next video.